Hello and welcome. In line with recent events where some 60,000 Moroccan young men forcefully entered Ceuta, it has become clear to the general public that this was an orchestrated event. And actually, this wasn't the first time. Morocco has historically relaxed its border control into the Spain territory or across the Strait of Gibraltar as a political pressure tool. Most notably, there are two main events that come to mind in May 2021 and in August 2014. In May 2021, about 8,000 to 10,000 men swam or waded into Ceuta within about 48 hours, with Moroccan border guards actively allowing them to pass. What happened was the Spain allowed Brahim Ghali, a leader of the pro-independence Polisario Front, to receive medical treatment in a Spanish hospital. As the outcome, the border was only resealed after Spain agreed to grant some 30 million to Morocco to ensure border security, and later Madrid had to flip its policy in support of Morocco's claims over the Western Sahara, which is currently a disputed region. In August 2014, something bizarre happened where about 1,200 migrants crossed the strait into Spain in inflatable dinghies, again within the 48-hour window. What happened was the Spanish civil guard patrols mistakenly stopped King Mohammed VI's Royal Yacht, as well as his jet skis, on a suspicion of drug smuggling. The incident appears to have infuriated the king, and so he personally complained to the King of Spain, Philippe VI. As an outcome, Moroccan maritime border enforcement suddenly paused its activity for a few days, and security resumed only after top Spanish police officials traveled to the yacht to personally apologize to King Mohammed VI. So Morocco uses this territorial geographic proximity as a tactical leverage every time it has some kind of an economic or tactical point to make to the European Union, or more specifically Spain or France, that way its former colonizers. Morocco uses short spikes in migrants to signal to the European Union its important role in border patrol between Africa and Europe, trying to appeal to the fact that constant border patrols require subsidies as well as political goodwill from Brussels on matters like maritime fishing or agricultural treaties, for example. But to understand why Morocco tends to resort to such strategies, we need to look at its political system, its trade relationships, as well as its political alliances with other countries around the world. On paper, Morocco has all of the prerequisites to be considered a modernized constitutional monarchy, with a parliament, elections, about 30 parties in its parliament, and an open relationship with the outside world. In practice, however, ultimate authority remains in the hands of the King Mohammed VI and his shadow network of royal political advisors, security chiefs, and business elite known as the Makhzen. The current monarch, Mohammed VI, has been in power since 1999. So the palace maintains its grip on power using the following narratives. One is the religious shield. Morocco still remains quite a religious state. The king holds the title of the commander of the faithful, and challenging the monarch is almost an attack on Islam itself, because it is considered that the monarchs in Morocco are descendants of the Prophet Mohammed himself. It is also said that having a monarchy is a buffer against chaos, because the palace is positioned as a neutral arbiter between the people and the overall political sphere and the supposed corrupt politicians. And so the monarchy tells the public that without the monarchy, the country falls into civil gridlock. Because it's surrounded by unstable neighbors, the Moroccan regime is able to give the Western powers an ultimatum where they either back the monarchy or have to face the chaos that is brought by those regions. Additionally, it is also considered that the monarchy can bypass the laborious and time-consuming red tape and make decisions faster. And of course, there's an argument regarding the national unity, that because the monarchy holds such a historic and cultural power, it can hold the population together as well as the surrounding countries. And yet, the controversy has always brewed beneath the surface. We have the usual where journalists are suppressed, political parties co-opted, billionaires such as current Prime Minister Aziz Akanouche, as you would expect, has been using his position to advance his own interests, exploiting the executive office to award himself and his businesses and those around him highly lucrative national contracts. One of such projects is a massive Casablanca desalination project and some of the regional gas extraction deals, which effectively blocks fair competition. But who cares about that? And so there's a lot of corruption, there's a lot of nepotism, and there's a lot of preferential treatment, and therefore there's deep inequality amongst those who are rich and those who are less fortunate. Youth unemployment also sits at nearly 30%, sparking regular widespread protest. We remember the Arab Spring, which Morocco took part of, that was primarily led by younger people. But of course, all of the protests tend to be met with harsh police crackdowns and mass arrests. Where it comes to the Morocco's and EU's relationship, it has been formally framed through the Euro-Mediterranean Association Agreement that grants both duty-free trade, but not on all items. This association agreement was signed in 1996 and entered into force in 2000. The provisions of this association agreement state that customs duties on all industrial goods have been completely eliminated, but the European Union and Morocco still maintain strict customs duties as well as volume quotas and minimum pricing penalties on sensitive agricultural goods related to seasonal fruits, processed foods, and small consumer shipments. Currently, there are talks to further extend the association agreement into the DCFTA, into the Deep and Comprehensive Free Trade Agreement, which will further allow to expand the trade into the cross-border services, the maritime transport, and corporate public procurement bids, for example. The DCFTA, as I have previously explained in my Ukraine video, would require Morocco to adopt quite a lot of EU's regulatory body just to make sure that all of the different standards are the same, and Morocco operates essentially on European standards as well as regulations. So Morocco holds roughly 70% of global phosphate reserves, and the EU imports over 1 billion annually in Moroccan fertilizers to sustain European agriculture. Morocco is a major supplier of winter tomatoes, berries, and citrus to European supermarkets, alongside around 1.35 billion in annual seafood exports. Morocco has also quietly become one of the largest exporters of passenger cars to the European Union because it's a home to massive manufacturing plants for European titans like Renault and Stellantis that hold Peugeot and Fiat productions. Morocco also exports automotive parts that account for about 7 billion yearly and all go to the European market. The EU and Morocco have also concluded an EU-Morocco Green Partnership in 2022, and Europe is currently looking at importing green energy from Morocco because they are considering to further invest in solar power, wind power, and green hydrogen. Also, Morocco is the only African country directly connected to the European electricity grid via undersea cables to Spain. And yet, despite billions in trade, Morocco still continues a relatively middle-income nation. Why? Obviously, there are many different reasons why, but experts allege that it is because it runs a two-tier economy where on one side you have high-tech automotive sector operating that requires specialized labor and ends up employing the skilled elites, whereas about 80% of the rest of the population remains trapped in low-wage labor and also is very much occupied with agricultural production. There are quite a lot of smaller-sized farms in Morocco. Morocco also does not hold any of its own fossil fuels production, and so it relies on the importation of energy resources, which also leads to its structural trade deficit. And of course, there's quite a bit of funneling of resources towards the royal family and those surrounding the royal family, which leaves the rest of the people wishing for more. There have been quite a few controversies related to the royal family, where one can claim that foreign direct investment dynamics in Morocco is quite particular. For example, while the foreign capital in Morocco operates within the clearly defined legal structure, allowing profit repatriation by foreign businesses, foreign direct investment also benefits from the initial tax holiday, sort of rewarding them for bringing that investment into Morocco. There's also a requirement to use the local structures either related to local production or local transportation networks, banking systems, legal financial structures. But at the same time, it has become widely reported that any especially major foreign direct investment in Morocco must pass through the royal family. There was a WikiLeaks leak where there was communication between the different American officials that reported that foreign businesses' projects were intentionally stalled by the local authorities until they agreed to take on a royal-linked company as a local joint venture partner, or state institutions were used to basically coerce foreign investors for whatever reasons to ask for favors or otherwise solicit bribes. There was also a scandal where European authorities uncovered that the Moroccan intelligence was running quite a sophisticated network to influence European politicians through bribes, to get some advantages related to trade deals, for example, or fisheries agreements. There's of course quite a bit of controversy related to the West Sahara, which again is a disputed territory, and that is the territory that Morocco has been considering for future green energy projects with Europe. And so Europe has also come under fire, especially Enel in Italy and Siemens Gamesa in Spain have faced fierce condemnation for partnering with the Moroccan state and wanting to build infrastructure on that disputed territory because the permission has not been granted by the local Sahrawi population. There's also a Sahara's Pablo Escobar. We all know that a lot of drugs, especially hash and cannabis, amongst a few others, come from Morocco into the European Union. And some of the recent judicial trial exposed how deeply integrated these drug trafficking rings are with the political actors, as well as Morocco's legal and business ecosystem. So it was alleged that senior Moroccan politicians, real estate tycoons, and regional council heads were active partners in a massive cross-border smuggling network. Prominent political figures, including lawmakers from the co-governing PAM party, used their state positions and shell companies to launder hundreds of millions of dollars in illicit cash. This money was mixed into legitimate construction firms, tourist infrastructure, and professional sports clubs to mimic foreign and domestic corporate investment. And so this brings us to a broader geopolitical chessboard, where Morocco currently holds a major non-NATO ally status with the United States, and it annually hosts the African Lion, which is the continent's largest joint military exercise involving NATO forces. As per the recent allegations, many have suspected that Morocco may have acted on the US's and Israel's behalf, leading this week's chaotic invasion of Ceuta. Because Prime Minister of Spain, Sanchez, has not been very graceful with Israel and has been criticizing Israel for its action in Palestine, which is quite uncommon for most European leaders. And so this was seen as a warning to Spain's officials to remind them that accidents often happen that cause chaos and instability. And sure enough, Morocco does recognize the limits of relying solely on Europe, and so it has been aggressively diversifying its foreign policy to integrate other actors on the international arena. In December 2020, the Trump administration brokered what was considered a historic quid pro quo called the Abraham Accords, where Morocco agreed to normalize diplomatic ties with Israel, and in exchange, the United States officially recognized Moroccan sovereignty over the Western Sahara. So what that means is that this deal wasn't just diplomacy. It was actually opening floodgates for advanced Israeli military tech, cybersecurity cooperation, and joint industrial projects. At the same time, American and European energy firms are being wooed by Morocco's attractive oil and gas exploration terms. Because though Morocco imports 90% of its energy, it still holds vital strategic infrastructure. For example, it holds a Maghreb-Europe gas pipeline originally built to funnel Algerian gas to Spain. But then when relationship with Algeria soured, that transport route was reversed, and instead now Morocco receives energy sources from Europe, importing regasified LNG. Additionally, recently there has been announced a 25 billion Nigeria-Morocco mega project that is proposing a 5,600 kilometers in pipeline meant to channel West Africa natural gas all the way from Nigeria straight into the EU market. We would wonder why Nigeria is all of a sudden so keen in exporting its resources. I have heard it's been bombed by the US. I wonder whether that has any relationship to how all of these different projects are currently being pushed forward where it comes to energy security. So this tight alignment with the West creates intense regional volatility because right next door to Morocco, there's Algeria, and Morocco considers Algeria its arch enemy. Algeria is one of the Africa's largest buyers of Russian weapons. Algeria is also a major supplier of natural gas to the southern Europe. Algeria and Iran also maintain close, strategically calculated alliances rooted in their religious proximity and anti-Western ideological alignment. They have a joint position on opposition to Israel and geopolitical interest in North Africa and the Sahel. Further east, of course, we have the recently destroyed Libya that remains a battleground of competing powers, where there's a Russian PMC presence and a growing Chinese infrastructure investment as well. So as Africa starts being involved in all of these geopolitical interactions, it is clear to me that different countries are called to essentially pick their side. The Moroccan political structures seem to be extremely self-interested where it comes to acquisition of resources and exploitation thereof, meaning that despite any diplomatic relations, the Moroccan monarchy is almost entirely ruling in its own interests and allows international presence in as much as they receive something in return, something considerable in return. And at this stage, it remains to be seen how Spain will react to Morocco's pressure. I wonder whether they will completely change their position on Israel in the coming weeks. Or maybe Sanchez will cease to be the prime minister in Spain. We shall see. In the meantime, if you need assistance understanding the different trade terms, and if you are thinking about trading with Morocco as a European or UK-based company, please do not hesitate in contacting me on my website. And in the meantime, please let me know what you think about this Moroccan situation in the comments. Please leave a like, subscribe, and thank you for watching, and see you next time.